Hello and welcome to Prague. My name is Brian with an I, and I'm originally from the United Kingdom. I like telling people about this beautiful country, its history and its culture, and so I became a tour guide. So that's why I'm going to be taking you around Prague. As you might have noticed, this series is called The Masked Guide, because when I started doing this, we had to wear a mask here in Prague because of COVID-19. But thankfully today they've relaxed the rules, so I can stand outside and I can talk about this beautiful city without wearing a mask. So let's get started. Here we are in the old town square here in Prague, known in Czech as Stará Městská náměstí. And as you can imagine, this old town square, which was established around about 1000 AD, has changed quite a lot over the centuries. For instance, we're about 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters higher than the old town square. The reason being that this area is very prone to flooding. They had trouble with floods in 2002 and in 2012. Now at the time when they started laying out the old town square in this city, they didn't have the technology to lower the river, so they just raised the land instead. So these houses which line the old town square, if you go down to what you think is a cellar or basement today, it is a cellar or basement today, but that would be an equivalent of the level of the old town square. So it gives you an idea how much it's changed over the centuries. For example, if you were standing at this spot at the beginning of the 20th century, standing in front of this Kinský Palace here, you would not see this huge memorial of Jan Hus, which we're going to come back to later. Also, you wouldn't get a good view of the beautiful church of St. Nicholas over there because, first of all, in front of the town hall there was a two-story building going across the corner there, and also you wouldn't see this beautiful street, which we're going to walk up and talk about later. By the way, if you do get the chance, do have a look inside that beautiful church of St. Nicholas over there, because they have got one of the most beautiful chandeliers. It dates from the time when that belonged to the Czech and Slovak Orthodox Church. It became a Hussite Protestant church in 1922, but it's still there and it's absolutely fantastic. Now, on my tours, I always ask my tourists, do I have any fans of Franz Kakfa, the famous Czech Jewish German writer? And invariably, 1 or 2 hands go up every 20 tours. Now, Franz Kakfa, who was born very close to here, the Kinský Palace, he was born near the Church of St. Nicholas, just over there, which I described previously, and he went to a school here. It was a German school for nearly 8 years. And just down here, where the box office of this National Gallery is today, because this is part of the National Gallery, his father had a haberdashery shop where he would sell things like cloth and threads and buttons and wool and that type of thing. Okay, we're just going to leave the Kinský Palace now, and we're going to walk up here to the Church of Our Lady Before Tin, one of the most iconic structures in Prague. And when you ever see pictures of Prague, you'll always see pictures of this beautiful church. So behind me is the beautiful Church of Our Lady Before Tin. They started building this church in the 14th century. It took 150 years to complete. Now, some people say that this beautiful church behind me was supposed to be the inspiration for Walt Disney's famous logo. You know, the one with the towers with a rainbow going behind it? Well, I've looked into this and I can find no connection with Walt Disney whatsoever. But it doesn't mean to say there's not a connection with Walt Disney, because there's always a connection with Disney somewhere in the world. And personally, I find that quite reassuring. Now, look directly at the church. Do you notice any difference between the tower on your left and on your right? When I ask people, they sort of say, oh, is it something to do with the windows? Is it something to do with the little baubles? Can you see that the tower on your right is wider than the tower on your left? Now, the tower on your left is the female tower, Eve, and the tower on your right is the male tower, Adam. There are other examples of this in Prague. So when they put 2 towers on the church, one tower was always larger than the other one, and the larger one was always the male one. And this goes to prove the theory that even 700 years ago, men were thinking about their size too. Now, another reason we talk about this church is because it's the burial place of Tycho Brahe, the famous 16th century Danish astronomer who came to work at the court of Rudolf II up at Prague Castle. And along with the German mathematician Johannes Kepler, between them they worked out the laws of planetary motion, which then Newton applied to his theory of gravitation in the following century. Now, the reason he's buried in this church is because he is a victim of his own politeness. the story goes, he was invited to a banquet given by one of his nobleman friends, and he was very much enjoying himself. The food was good, the drink was good, but after all that beer and all that wine, he felt the need to go to the toilet, to the bathroom, to relieve himself. Unfortunately, the protocol and the etiquette at the time said you could not get up and go to the bathroom or toilet unless your host went first. Can you imagine that? Somebody invites you around for an evening to watch some sport on TV, have a few beers, or invites you over for dinner, and you're desperate to go, and you've got to wait for your host to go first. Well, it turns out that Tico was just absolutely too polite to say anything, so he didn't say anything, and he just sat there in silence and suffered. Eventually he collapsed, and he died 11 days later. It's said they discovered he had died of a burst bladder. Ouch! I don't know whether or not that's true. Now, there has been speculation surrounding the death of Tico Roth for many centuries. In fact, people think he might have been poisoned. Now, his body was exhumed twice, once in 1901 and also latterly in 2010. The scientists examining his remains came to the conclusion that his death was consistent with his lifestyle. That is, that he had a very rich diet and just drank toxic amounts of alcohol. A bit like people today, really. Now, I learned from some of my Danish tourists that I actually never pronounced it correctly, so I did ask one of my tourists some time ago to record how it actually should be said, and this is how it should be pronounced.
Tycho Brahe.
Thank you. Now, directly opposite us, where that park is, where those trees are, and you can see those food shacks in front, that's where the old town hall used to stand. Now, it's not there anymore because it was destroyed by the Nazis at the end of the war in 1945. What happened was, when Hitler was dead and Berlin had surrendered, Prague was still in the control of the Waffen SS, and they didn't believe the war was over, nor that Hitler was dead. They thought it was just Allied propaganda, so they carried on fighting. Now, as a result of that, the citizens of Prague came onto the streets, built barricades, armed themselves, and tried to take on the Waffen SS. During the insurrection in 1945, which is known as the Prague Uprising, the old town hall was hit by a firebomb which burned it out completely and also destroyed parts of the astronomical clock, which we're going to talk about later. It was damaged so badly that they had to demolish it. They did hold a competition to see whether or not they could actually rebuild it, but it actually never came to fruition. Now, all that's left of the old town hall today, that original building, is this single red wall here, which has been kept as a memorial to those almost 1,700 men and women who died fighting bravely on the streets of Prague in the final days of World War II. Also, the square has been the scene of a number of major historical events in Czech history. In particular, from that balcony in 1948, Klement Goldwald, the leader of the then Czechoslovakian Communist Party, announced the formation of the new Czechoslovakian Communist government after the coup here in February of 1948, which then subjected the country to 41 years of hardline communism. And we're going to be referring to that many times as we go around Prague because it's an important part of their recent history. Now, when you go around Prague in the Czech Republic, you'll come across a lot of really well-preserved churches and cathedrals. But this is kind of ironic, because apparently the Czech Republic is supposed to be one of the most atheist nations in the world. In a census carried out in 2011, apparently 82% of the population said they had no faith. Now, I'm not sure that's actually true, because when you really look at the statistics, you see about half of those actually didn't specify anything at all. Nonetheless, if it is true, it's a little bit ironic, because at Christmas time, Czech children don't get their Christmas presents from Father Christmas, Santa Claus or Saint Nick. They actually get them from the baby Jesus. And they write little messages to the baby Jesus saying what they would like for Christmas. And at Christmas time, all around Prague, you can see little post boxes where you see the children reaching up to deliver their little letter to the baby Jesus. Now, if you have enjoyed this video of us going around Prague, then please do like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the little bell button so that you will get notifications. Next time we're going to be looking at Jan Hus, we're going to be looking at the Battle of the White Mountain and the astronomical clock, because I'm sure that when you told people you were coming to Prague, they said you must go and see the astronomical clock, which is what we're actually going to do. So see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.